The world of Tarion Prime was a place of calm rivers, golden plains, and sky-high towers built from crystal and stone. The people who lived there, the Calirians, were known across their region of space as artists, thinkers, and dreamers. They had no armies, no warships, and no need for weapons. Their history had been one of peace and learning, but peace did not last forever. On a clear night under the twin moons, the sky burned red. A fleet of black jagged warships entered orbit. They belonged to the Draxans, a ruthless species that lived for conquest. The Draxans saw the Calirians not as equals, not as neighbors, but as prey. To them, Tarion Prime was a new jewel to crush and claim. The Calirians watched in terror as fire rained from above. Cities that once shined with music and lights turned into ash and rubble. Families ran to the underground shelters, clutching one another, praying that someone, anyone, would answer their cries. In the Grand Council Hall, the leaders gathered. Their voices trembled. "We cannot fight them," whispered Elder Thalen, his thin hands shaking. "We have no weapons, no soldiers. What can we do?" Another counselor, Mira, lifted her gaze to the sky. "Then we must do the only thing we can. We must call for help." At once, the brightest engineers of Tarion Prime worked day and night, sending a signal across the stars. It was a desperate message carried on every frequency they could reach. The message was simple and full of sorrow. "This is Tarion Prime. We are under attack. We are not warriors. We are not soldiers. If anyone hears this, please, help us." The signal spread like a whisper into the vast galaxy. It crossed systems, wormholes, and ancient relays. The Calirians hoped someone would listen, but in many places the message was ignored. Powerful empires heard it and turned away. To help Tarion Prime meant to stand against the Draxans, and few were brave enough to do that. Some rulers shook their heads and said, "It is sad, but not our problem." Others simply silenced the message and moved on with their lives. The Calirians grew weaker each day. Villages were burned, towers shattered, and people captured by the Draxans. The once proud world of peace was on its knees, and yet the signal kept going. It reached farther, past stars unknown even to the Calirians themselves, and then, one day it reached a strange planet, Earth on Earth. The message appeared on the screens of a listening station hidden deep in the mountains. A young technician named Daniel rubbed his eyes when the alien words translated into English before him. He froze. "Sir, you need to see this." The commander leaned over his shoulder. At first he thought it was another trick, maybe a distorted echo from some unknown source. But as he listened, he felt the weight in the words. It was not a trap. It was a plea. Within hours, the message spread across Earth's networks. Politicians argued. Scientists debated. Soldiers remained silent, but their eyes burned with a quiet fire. Some leaders said, "We cannot risk it. We don't even know them." Others said, "If we do nothing, the Draxans will one day come for us too." The news reached every corner of Earth. People in crowded cities, children in schools, workers in factories, all heard the sorrowful cry of the Calirians. For the first time in centuries, humanity faced a choice not about themselves but about others far away who had no one else. And while governments delayed, ordinary people spoke. They said words that carried weight. "If we turn away, then who are we? If they called for help, we must answer. Deathworlders don't run. Deathworlders protect." The term Deathworlders had been given to humans by other species who once studied Earth. Earth was considered one of the harshest, most dangerous planets, violent storms, burning deserts, freezing winters, hungry predators, and countless diseases. Life on Earth was brutal, and humans had risen not by being the strongest or fastest, but by being the most enduring. Other species feared them. Few understood them. But now that name would mean something more. A meeting was held in the great chamber of the United Earth Council. The debate went long into the night. Some argued for safety, others for action. But when the dawn came, the decision was made. Humanity would go. They called the mission Operation Vowkeeper, a promise to stand for those who could not. Ships were prepared, not only from the military but also from explorers, traders, and even private crews who volunteered. Weapons were loaded, shields reinforced, and every soldier who signed up knew the risk. They were not going to fight for territory, not for wealth, not even for survival. They were going because someone out there cried for help. Far away, the Calirians sat in the ruins of their once proud cities. Many had lost hope. Elder Thalen whispered, "No one will come. We are alone." But Mira, the counselor who had believed, shook her head. "Someone heard us," she said softly. "I feel it. They will come." And then the sky lit up. Through the thick clouds, through the smoke of burning towers, strange new ships appeared. They were not smooth like Calirian craft, nor jagged like the Draxans. They were built with power and function, strong and sturdy, armored like beasts of steel. The people of TerionPrime lifted their eyes. Could it be another enemy? Were they about to fall once again? But then, the speakers came alive with a voice unlike any they had heard. "This is the United Earth Fleet. Do not fear. We have heard your call." The Calirians wept. For the first time since the invasion began, they felt something warm in their hearts. Hope. And far above, the Deathworlders prepared themselves. The Draxans had brought terror to this peaceful world, but now they would learn what it meant to awaken humanity. The fleet of Earth ships moved through space like a wall of iron. They were not the fastest or the most beautiful vessels in the galaxy, but every one of them carried the mark of a death world. Their engines were built to survive storms of radiation. Their armor could endure impacts that would crush other ships. And inside, the humans carried something stronger than any machine, the will to protect. In the command ship Resolute, Captain Elena Torres stood before a glowing star map. Her eyes were steady as she watched the red dots of the Draxan fleet surrounding TerionPrime. She pressed a button on her console, and her voice echoed through the fleet. "This is Captain Torres. Today we do not fight for Earth. We fight for those who cannot. We fight so the galaxy will know that when Deathworlders make a promise, we keep it." Her words spread across hundreds of ships. Marines checked their rifles. Pilots ran final checks. Medics prepared their kits. Volunteers, some who had never been in space before, sat with quiet fear but also quiet pride. None of them doubted why they were there. On the ground, the Calirians watched with wide eyes as the strange fleet entered orbit. For them, humans looked small, fragile, and almost weak compared to the towering Draxans. Yet when they saw the way the human ships moved, precise and sharp, they felt something stir. Elder Thalen whispered, "Can they truly stand against the Horde?" Mira placed a hand on his arm. "They did not come all this way to watch us fall." For the first time since the invasion, the Calirians dared to hope. The first landing craft touched the ground near the capital ruins. A ramp lowered and human soldiers marched out. Their armor was not smooth or shining. It was scratched, dented, and heavy. Their helmets reflected the fires of the broken city. Each soldier carried weapons unlike anything the Calirians had ever seen. Weapons built for survival against deadly beasts on Earth. One soldier stepped forward, removing her helmet. She had sharp eyes and dark hair tied back, her face streaked with dust. She raised her hand in greeting. "We are humans. We heard your call. We are here to stand with you." The Calirians gasped softly. These strangers looked so fragile compared to the mighty Draxans, but their voices carried iron. Mira bowed her head. We thank you. We thought no one would come." The human smiled gently. "Then today you learned something about Deathworlders. We don't run from a fight when someone cries for help." That night, humans and Calirians sat together in the ruins. Soldiers shared food with starving children. Medics treated the wounded with quick skill. Engineers studied the wreckage of Calirian buildings, already planning how to reinforce them. The Calirians were amazed at how adaptable the humans were. The air of TerionPrime was thick with strange spores that made most aliens weak, but humans breathed it with little trouble. The nights grew bitter cold, yet humans simply wrapped themselves in gear and carried on. They were creatures built to survive extremes. Children touched the humans' armor with curiosity. One boy asked a soldier, "Are you not afraid of the Draxans?" The soldier knelt down, smiling gently. "Of course I am," he said honestly. "But courage is not about having no fear. It's about standing anyway. That's what we do." The boy's eyes shined. For the first time, he believed his people might survive. Meanwhile, in orbit, human ships prepared for the storm. Scouts reported that the Draxans had noticed the newcomers. A larger fleet was already moving toward TerionPrime. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Torres met with her officers. "They'll come in full force," said Commander Hayes. "They think we're soft. They think we'll break." Torres nodded slowly. "Then let's remind them what it means to call Earth a death world." The Draxans soon arrived, their ships like blades cutting through the void. They sent a broadcast filled with scorn. "You dare to stand in our path? You who come from that cursed death world? Leave now or be crushed, Torres answered calmly. You have taken enough from this galaxy. You have burned worlds that could not resist. But today you face humans. And humans do not bow to tyrants. The Draxan commander laughed. Then prepare to be erased. And the battle began. The first clash was in space. Human ships moved with strange tactics. Instead of forming neat lines like most empires, they scattered, hiding among asteroid fields and using debris as cover. The Draxans fired their heavy cannons, expecting to smash the humans easily, but the Deathworlder ships endured. Their armor cracked but held, their shields flickered but did not fall. Then the humans struck back. They launched swarms of missiles guided by clever AI, weaving between the Draxans' defenses. They used railguns to punch through weak points the Draxans never guarded, and when the enemy pressed too close, humans rammed damaged ships straight into their foes, sacrificing steel but saving lives. The Calirians, watching from below, saw flashes of fire in the sky. To them, it looked like the heavens themselves were at war. They prayed silently, not knowing if their new allies could hold. On the ground, human troops prepared as Draxan landing craft broke through the atmosphere. The humans did not retreat. Instead, they rushed forward, meeting the towering warriors head-on. The Draxans were larger, their muscles thick, their armor heavy. But humans moved faster. They rolled under swings, fired in tight bursts, and used the broken ruins of the city as traps. Where a Calirian would have collapsed from exhaustion, a human kept moving. Where a Draxan roared in triumph, a human answered with steady silence and another strike. The Calirians watched in awe. These fragile-looking creatures fought like predators, clever and relentless. The humans did not just resist, they adapted with every moment. One scene burned itself into memory. A group of Draxans stormed a shelter where Calirian civilians hid. Before they could break the door, a squad of humans appeared. Outnumbered 2-1, the humans fought with unshaken resolve. Not a single Draxan reached the civilians. When the battle ended, the children inside whispered the word Deathworlders with respect instead of fear. Back in orbit, the fight reached its peak. The Draxans tried to crush the humans with sheer numbers, but Captain Torres had prepared for this. She used Earth's strange creativity, a weapon the Draxans could not predict. Ships turned debris fields into traps, forcing enemy vessels into collisions. Mines were hidden inside wreckage, detonating at the perfect moment. For every human ship that fell, 2 Draxan ships followed. Finally, after hours of fire and smoke, the Draxans began to retreat. Their commander's voice shook with anger and disbelief. "This is not over, Deathworlders!" But the humans had won the first battle. On the ground, the Calirians cheered. For the first time, the Draxans had been stopped. They gathered around their human allies, some crying, some laughing, all grateful. Mira stepped forward to Captain Torres, who had come down to see the survivors. "We thought we were forgotten," she said softly. "But you came. You saved us." Torres placed a hand over her heart. "We are Deathworlders. We don't abandon those who ask for help. And we're not finished yet." The word spread quickly among the Calirians. Hope was no longer a whisper. It was alive, burning bright. But above, far across the galaxy, the Draxans were already gathering a greater fleet. Their pride had been wounded, and their hunger for revenge burned hotter than ever. They would not let this insult go unanswered. The humans knew this. The Calirians knew this. The first battle was over, but the war was only beginning, and in the heart of every Deathworlder burned the same vow. We will not let them fall. The smoke of the first battle had hardly cleared when the Calirians realized the truth. The Draxans were not defeated. They had only been delayed. The victory of the Deathworlders was powerful, but it was only the beginning. Far across the stars, the Draxan High Command raged in fury. Never before had a soft world defied them. To be beaten by humans, fragile creatures from a cursed Deathworld, was an insult that burned hotter than fire. They gathered a new fleet, larger than before, promising to make an example of both Earth and HFY. The storm was coming. On HFY, the humans worked without rest. Engineers reinforced shelters, turning broken buildings into strongholds. Soldiers taught the Calirians basic drills, how to take cover, how to move, how to protect one another. Even though the Calirians had no weapons of their own, they learned quickly, eager to help their human protectors. At first, the Calirians struggled. Their hands shook as they practiced with borrowed human tools. They were not born for war. But the humans were patient teachers. One Marine, Sergeant Keller, told them, "You don't have to be soldiers. You just need to stand together. Courage is stronger than any blade." The Calirians listened. They learned, and they began to believe. In orbit, Captain Torres studied the growing reports. The Draxans were moving fast. Scouts estimated the enemy fleet to be 3 times larger than the human task force. Commander Hayes frowned. "They'll crush us with numbers." Torres nodded but did not waver. "Numbers are not everything. The Draxans fight the same way every time. We'll make them bleed for every step." Her words became the battle plan. Humanity would not face the Draxans head-on. They would strike with cunning, with traps, with every trick born from centuries of surviving on a deadly world. The day of the great clash arrived. The sky above Tarion Prime darkened as the Draxan fleet arrived like a storm of blades. Hundreds of ships, their jagged hulls gleaming with malice, fell into orbit. The ground shook as their engines roared through the atmosphere. The Calirians trembled, remembering the first invasion. But this time they were not alone. Human ships rose to meet the threat. The Resolute led the charge, its engines blazing bright. Smaller frigates darted ahead, weaving through debris fields and asteroid belts. The battle began with a flash of fire so bright that the night became day. The Draxans came with brute force, firing heavy cannons in endless streams. But the humans refused to fight in a straight line. Instead, they danced between the attacks, hiding among shattered moons, using gravity wells to slingshot into enemy flanks. The Draxans roared with anger. They were used to enemies breaking after the first wave. But the Deathworlders did not break. They adapted. They endured. Every time a human ship was struck, another swooped in to cover it. Every time a squad was pinned down, another squad moved to flank the enemy. The humans fought not as individuals, but as one body, each part moving to protect the other. It was a style of war the Draxans had never faced before. On the ground, the clash was even fiercer. Draxan warriors stormed the cities, towering beasts in armor that glowed with blood-red lights. They swung massive blades, their strength enough to crush stone walls. Against most species, this would have been the end. But the humans met them head-on. Marines moved like shadows, darting between ruins, striking and vanishing. Snipers on rooftops picked targets with steady hands. Explosives turned alleys into traps. The Calirians watched in awe as battles raged through their streets. They saw a squad of humans hold a bridge against a force 3 times their size. They saw medics run through fire to save both human and Calirian lives. They saw ordinary men and women from Earth fight like giants. One Calirian youth, Aaron, whispered to Mira, "They are not like us. They are not afraid." Mira shook her head. "No, Aaron, they are afraid. But they fight anyway. That is what makes them Deathworlders." The battle turned into chaos. Fire lit the skies, buildings crumbled, and the sound of war echoed across the plains. Yet through it all, the humans stood unbroken. At one point, a massive Draxan war beast, half machine, half living creature, charged into the city. Its roar shook the ground and Calirians screamed in terror. But a squad of human engineers had already prepared for it. They lured the beast into a narrow street filled with charges. When the creature stepped inside, the humans triggered the trap. The explosion shook the city and the beast fell in flames. The Calirians cheered. For the first time, they saw that the Draxans could be beaten not only in orbit but on the ground as well. Still, the humans paid a heavy price. Ships burned in orbit. Soldiers fell in the streets. The Draxans were powerful, and every inch of ground was won with blood. But the humans did not stop. Even when wounded, they kept moving. Even when outnumbered, they fought harder. Captain Torres sent a message across all frequencies. "To every Calirian listening, to every world that hears this, know this truth. The Draxans can be fought. They can be stopped. And they will fall." The words carried far. Across the galaxy, small civilizations hiding from the Draxans began to whisper. If humans could stand, maybe others could too. The battle raged for 3 days and nights. By the end, the once shining city of the Calirians was scarred, but it still stood. The Draxans, stunned by the unexpected resistance, pulled back their surviving forces. For the first time in their history, the Draxans had not simply crushed their prey. They had been matched, even driven away. The humans stood bloodied, tired and wounded, but victorious. In the aftermath, the Calirians gathered in the council hall. Mira spoke with tears in her eyes. "We were a people of peace. We had no hope against the Horde, but you came. You showed us what it means to fight, not just with weapons, but with heart. We will never forget. Captain Torres, her uniform scorched from battle, looked at the gathered crowd. This war is not over. The Draxons will return stronger than before. But remember this, you are not alone. Deathworlders stand with you. The Calirians wept openly. Their world was scarred, but their spirit was no longer broken. Hope burned in them like never before. Far away in the dark chambers of the Draxon High Command, the warlords raged. Their pride was wounded, their fleets scarred. They swore vengeance, promising to gather the full strength of their empire. They would return with fire enough to burn entire systems. But as their voices thundered, another truth echoed quietly across the stars. The Deathworlders had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The skies above Tarion Prime were quiet now, but it was a dangerous calm. The smoke of battle still curled above the ruined cities, and the ground was scarred from fire and explosions. The Calirians had survived the first clash with the Draxons thanks to the humans, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. Captain Elena Torres walked through the streets alongside her soldiers. She inspected the ruins with sharp eyes. "We cannot wait for the Draxons to return," she said. "We need to prepare. Every street, every building, every alley must be ready for defense." The Calirians watched in awe as humans worked tirelessly. They moved as if the planet itself had forged them. Engineers reinforced walls and towers, turning shattered structures into makeshift fortresses. Soldiers trained in tactics and drills, showing the Calirians how to move in coordinated groups. Even volunteers who had never held a weapon before learned quickly, encouraged by the patient humans. In the council hall, Elder Thalen addressed the Calirian leaders. "Our people have seen what humans can do," he said. "We were weak, helpless, but they have shown us that strength is not only in muscle or weapon. Strength is in courage and unity and the will to fight for others. We must stand with them or we will fall when the Draxons return." Mira nodded. "They do not fight for power, for conquest, or for themselves alone. They fight for those who cannot fight. That is what makes them different. That is what makes them dangerous to the Draxons." Across Tarion Prime, hope had begun to spread. Children who had huddled in fear now helped deliver supplies. Farmers once hiding in fields worked to clear rubble and repair buildings. Even scholars who had spent their lives in libraries were now learning defensive tactics and helping the engineers plan defenses. The humans had not just saved them, they had inspired them. Meanwhile, far from Tarion Prime, the Draxons were gathering. Their fleets were massive, numbering thousands of warships and countless ground troops. Every Draxon warlord had been ordered to converge on Tarion Prime and crush the humans and Calirians alike. The Draxon High Commander, a monstrous figure known as Zirak the Ruthless, slammed his clawed fist on the command table. "These humans dare to resist us?" he roared. "They are nothing but fragile creatures. Yet they have stopped our greatest warriors. This insult will not stand. Prepare the fleet. When we return, Tarion Prime will burn, and the Deathworlders will learn their place." The Draxons worked tirelessly, building new weapons, training new soldiers, and preparing war machines that could crush entire cities. But no amount of preparation could erase the fear that had begun to creep into their ranks. Everywhere they went, they whispered the name of the humans who had dared to strike back. On Tarion Prime, Captain Torres and her officers held a briefing. Holographic images of the approaching fleet rotated slowly above the table. "They will come in greater numbers," said Commander Hayes. "We cannot hold them with what we have." Torres shook her head. "Numbers are not the only advantage. The Draxons fight the same way every time. They rely on brute force. We have strategy, creativity, and the will to survive. We will make them regret every step." The plan was simple but bold. The humans would train the Calirians in basic combat and guerrilla tactics. They would use the terrain to their advantage, turning the ruined cities and forests into traps. And in space, the human fleet would attack in small, unpredictable waves, using speed and clever maneuvers to strike at weak points in the Draxon formation. It was a strategy built not just on strength, but on intelligence, and humans had an abundance of both. Over the next week, the Calirians transformed. They were still not warriors in the traditional sense, but they were no longer helpless. Scouts moved quietly through the forests, marking enemy approach routes. Civilians learned how to hide and survive if a Draxon patrol passed through. Engineers and scholars helped build barricades, trenches, and emergency shelters. One of the most inspiring moments came when a group of children helped set up warning systems using lights and alarms. They were young, But under the guidance of human soldiers, they became part of the defense. When asked why they worked so hard, one boy said, "We must help. The humans risked everything for us. Now it is our turn to protect what is left of our home." The humans watched these developments with quiet pride. They had not only defended the Calirians, they had given them courage. And that courage would be tested soon. The Draxans did not waste time. Scouts reported that the massive fleet was approaching. Thousands of ships moved through space like a black wave, engines glowing red, weapons ready. Torres stood on the deck of the Resolute, looking at the approaching armada. "They think numbers make them unstoppable," she said. "But the galaxy has underestimated humans before, and they will learn that again today." The soldiers around her nodded, their expressions calm but determined. Each of them understood the stakes. They were not fighting for conquest, for glory, or even for survival alone. They were fighting for a species that could not fight for itself, and they would not fail. As the Draxan fleet neared Tarion Prime, humans and Calirians worked together to prepare the first lines of defense. The Calirians laid traps along the most likely landing zones, while humans placed explosives and sensor grids. Every building was fortified. Every street became a potential choke point. Even small victories mattered. A squad of Calirians, guided by human marines, successfully captured a Draxan scout craft and used its technology to improve their defenses. The Calirians learned quickly, absorbing knowledge like sponges. They were becoming something stronger than they had ever imagined. The night before the Draxan fleet would strike, Captain Torres gathered her officers. "This will be the biggest battle we have fought," she said.
"Many of us may fall.
"But remember why we fight. We fight for those who cannot fight. We fight because someone called for help and we answered. Today we do not just protect a planet, we show the galaxy that courage can overcome fear, and that unity is stronger than tyranny." Her words were met with silence, then quiet determination. The soldiers understood. They would face impossible odds, yet they were ready. On the streets below, the Calirians gathered to watch. For the first time, they were no longer hiding. They had learned, they had trained, and they had hope. They whispered among themselves, "The Deathworlders fight with us. Perhaps we can survive." The morning came with the roar of engines and the glow of fire in orbit. Thousands of Draxan ships descended toward the planet, their shadows covering cities and forests. They came with firepower beyond imagination, expecting easy victory. But the humans were ready. The fleet split into smaller groups, darting through asteroid belts, weaving between debris and striking at the Draxan formation where it was weakest. Explosions erupted across space as the humans forced collisions, sabotaged engines, and destroyed supply ships. On the ground, Draxan landing craft fell into traps. Streets filled with obstacles, trenches, and cleverly placed explosives. Human soldiers moved through the battlefield like shadows, striking and disappearing. Calirians worked alongside them, helping in any way they could. The Draxans roared in frustration. Every step they took was met with resistance. They had expected the fragile humans to break, but these Deathworlders did not break. By the end of the day, the Draxans had been slowed. Their fleet was damaged, their ground forces stalled. The humans and Calirians had turned the tide, not with raw strength alone, but with planning, courage, and unity. The Calirians looked at the horizon, where smoke still rose from the battlefield. Elder Thalen whispered, "We may yet survive. These humans. They are more than we imagined." Mira nodded. "Yes, they are Deathworlders. They will not leave us behind." And across the galaxy, other species who had once feared the Draxans began to whisper. Perhaps they thought there was hope. Perhaps someone could resist the unstoppable. The storm had risen, and when the Draxans returned, they would find a planet and a people ready. The sun rose over Tarion Prime, casting long shadows across ruined cities and scorched plains. The planet had survived the first wave of the Draxan invasion, but all knew it was only the calm before the storm. Captain Elena Torres stood on a ridge overlooking the main city, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Today we end this," she said quietly to herself. Then she turned to her officers. "We fight not just to survive, but to strike back. The Draxans will learn what it means to awaken Deathworlders." Her officers nodded, their expressions serious but determined. Every human on Tarion Prime understood the stakes. This was more than defense, it was a promise kept, a vow of vengeance for the helpless Calirians. and a message to the galaxy. Cruelty would not go unanswered. Far beyond the planet, the Draxan High Command had gathered their full might. Their fleet stretched across space, thousands of ships and millions of soldiers ready to burn Prime to ash. Zarek the Ruthless, their commander, roared in his command hall. "These humans dared to stop us," he bellowed. "They crushed our scouts, destroyed our patrols, and humiliated our warriors. Today we will finish them. Every human, every Calirian, every trace of defiance obliterated." Yet even in their fury, whispers of fear traveled among the Draxan ranks. They had underestimated the humans once, and the memory of that first defeat haunted them. On the planet, the Calirians had transformed. They were no longer helpless victims. Trained by the Deathworlders, they could move stealthily through streets, use basic weapons, and operate defensive systems with precision. Though not warriors by nature, they had courage, and courage alone could turn the tide in desperate battles. Mira walked through the city, checking on civilians. Children and elders moved quickly to shelters while engineers and volunteers reinforced barricades. Every citizen, in some way, contributed to the defense. For the first time, they were not just survivors. They were participants in their own protection. "We are ready," she whispered to Elder Thalen. "We will fight, not alone, but together." He nodded slowly, hope filling his eyes for the first time in months. Captain Torres reviewed the battle plan one final time. The humans would strike the Draxans on multiple fronts. Space assault. The human fleet would split into small, unpredictable groups targeting command ships and supply lines, forcing chaos in the enemy ranks. Ground resistance. Marines would engage in guerrilla tactics, luring Draxan forces into traps prepared throughout the ruined cities. Calirian support. Newly trained Calirians would act as scouts, engineers, and defenders, assisting humans while learning from every encounter. "This is not just war," Torres said. "It is strategy, courage, and will. We are the blade that strikes when tyranny thinks it is safe." As the Draxan fleet descended, the humans waited. Silence stretched across the cities like a heavy blanket, broken only by the hum of machinery and the anxious whispers of the Calirians. Then the sky erupted. The first wave of Draxan ships struck, but humans were ready. Swarms of drones darted between enemy vessels, disorienting them. Railguns tore through their weaker hulls. Explosives hidden in asteroid fields detonated, destroying several warships before the Draxans could react. In orbit, the battle was brutal. Human ships moved with speed and precision, appearing where the Draxans least expected. The Deathworlders did not merely survive, they dictated the flow of the fight. For every human ship destroyed, 2 Draxan vessels fell. Below, the Draxan ground forces stormed the cities, expecting easy conquest. But traps, barricades, and ambushes turned every street into a killing ground. Explosives buried in rubble, Calirian scouts guiding human squads, and sharp, coordinated strikes forced the Draxans to advance slowly, painfully. One human squad, led by Sergeant Keller, held a bridge against overwhelming numbers. Using clever traps and precise fire, they prevented the Draxans from entering the city center. When the last enemy fell, the squad cheered, though exhausted and bloodied. The Calirians who had witnessed this stood in awe. One young girl, Arya, whispered, "They are not just fighters. They are legends. The Draxans were relentless. Every time a ship fell, another arrived. Every time a squad was defeated, another marched forward. But the humans had a secret advantage, unity. Every human knew their purpose. Every Calirian knew their role. Together they were unstoppable." Captain Torres ordered the final phase of the attack, a direct strike on the Draxan command fleet. Using captured data and careful planning, the humans identified the flagship where Zarek the Ruthless commanded. The Resolute and its strike group surged forward, weaving between enemy fire. Missiles, railguns, and electronic warfare devices struck in perfect coordination. The Draxan flagship, confident in its size and power, could not anticipate the speed and cunning of the humans. When the flagship finally fell, its destruction sent shockwaves across the Draxan ranks. Without leadership, their fleets faltered, retreating or falling into disarray. The Draxans, who had thought themselves invincible, now realized the humans' warning was not empty words. On the ground, the Draxans fought desperately, but human squads and Calirian allies pushed them back. Every city street, every ruined building, every trap worked in their favor. Exhausted but relentless, The humans drove the invaders from city to city. Finally, the remaining Draxans attempted to flee, boarding ships that had survived the orbital assault. But the human fleet anticipated their escape routes. Every shuttle was intercepted, every transport destroyed. None escaped. By nightfall, the Draxans were beaten, scattered, and humiliated. Tarion Prime, once on the brink of destruction, was free. The Calirians wept openly. They had seen their world nearly destroyed, yet they had survived. They had witnessed creatures from another planet, humans, fight not for themselves, not for glory, but for them. Elder Thalen approached Captain Torres. "Your people. They are more than warriors. They are saviors. We owe you everything." Torres shook her head, her armor scorched and hands bruised. "You do not owe us. You fought alongside us. Courage is not measured in strength alone. You stood with us, and that is what made this victory possible." Mira, standing beside them, added, "We thought we were helpless, but you showed us that even the smallest among us can become strong if we fight for what is right. You have changed our world forever." News of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. Civilizations that had once hidden from the Draxans began to rise. The story of the Deathworlders reached far corners of space. Humans had arrived when others would not. Humans had fought when others had fled. Humans had delivered vengeance for a people who could not defend themselves. Across star systems, whispers began. If humans are your enemies, fear them. If they are your allies, cherish them. For the Calirians, the story was more personal. Children now played in streets that had once been battlefields. Families rebuilt homes. Scholars returned to their studies, inspired not only by survival but by the bravery they had witnessed. The world of peace was scarred, yes, but it had a new hope, a new courage that would never fade. And humans? They did not linger for praise. Once the Draxans were defeated, Captain Torres gathered her fleet. "This world is safe for now," she said, "but we move on. There are others out there who will need help. Wherever someone cries for aid, Deathworlders will answer." The Calirians watched the humans depart, understanding something profound. These creatures from Earth had fought not because they sought power, but because they understood the value of protecting others. They had delivered not just vengeance, but a lesson in courage, resilience, and unity. In the aftermath, the Draxans licked their wounds, their empire shaken. They had faced humans and been humbled. For the first time, the galaxy knew that tyranny was not absolute. Strength alone could not dominate. Intelligence, courage, and the will to fight for others could topple the strongest empires. The Calirians named the humans the Guardians of Tarion Prime. It was a title earned not in conquest, but in action. And far across the stars, the legend of the Deathworlders grew. The species that could survive any world, endure any trial, and rise to fight when the weak cried for help. Tarion Prime would never forget. Neither would the galaxy, and somewhere among the stars, Captain Torres looked ahead, knowing the fight was never truly over. But for now, vengeance had been delivered. Justice had been served, and the cry for help had been answered.